just yet. So now we're live. Everybody's here. Shalom Aleichem and welcome to the first premiere episode of Schmoozing with Avi, the series. And I could not be happier. I had a mask. So here, let me go through the routine. Wear your masks. Wash your hands. Keep your distance. Stay safe. Bleibt gesinnt in stark. My first guest is my idol. I cannot tell you how much I love this man from the time I was a very young boy when I saw him and his family on Broadway, and I wouldn't be here without him. So before I tell you exactly who he is, he has done endless films, television, theater. He is a star all over the world, and especially in Israel, because I remember when I was growing up in Israel, he was everything. His films were the most successful ever. He wrote and directed the award-winning Israeli feature film Azimut. He stars in the Israeli TV series Judah. He's the voice of Amos in Netflix series Fauda. Ladies and gentlemen, I please welcome my dearest friend who I adore from a very long time ago. And the
George Clooney.
Mike Burstyn. Kim Shoin. So we lost a couple of minutes.
That's okay. Before we were Toit, now we were Lebedik.
Now we're Lebedik and Lustig, Git Yontif, Git Azisten Hanukkah. I have my two candles right over here. Mike, Shalom Aleichem.
Aleichem Shalom and Mazel Tov. May this be the first of many, many schmoozes of yours live, now that you know how to go live. Before you didn't know how to go live.
I did a whole festival 3 months ago live, and today, for the first time, I couldn't figure it out. But now we're here, and everybody is watching us.
Yeah.
We are live, by the way, everybody, just so you know, we are live on 3 platforms. On our YiddishFest.org website, our YouTube channel, our YI Love Jewish and Yiddishkeit Initiative, and our Facebook page. Mike, so I was telling the story earlier when I thought we were live that I owe my career to you, for real. I mean, I'm not being facetious. I'm not being hyperbolic. When I was a young boy, I went to see you and your family on Broadway in maybe the greatest Yiddish musical of all time, the Megillah of Itzik Manger. You played Fastre Gosse, and I thought I was madly in love with you. I knew every word of every song. I went backstage to the door waiting after the production, and you came out. And I said, "Oh my God, Mr. Burstyn, please, can I have your autograph?" And you said, "What's your name, little boy?" And I said, "My name is Avrema Lehoffman." You said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I said, "I want to be an actor just like you." And you wrote on my playbill, "May you have a long and successful career." You signed it. I cherish it. And ever since then, I have been a professional actor. So
and I've been waiting for the 10% ever since then.
You know what?
My commission, I haven't received a penny.
When I start getting child support from Fivish Finkel's estate, I'll pay you your 10%.
I'm glad, you know, if I did anything, if I was able to contribute anything to your success in life and your professional success, I'm very pleased. So it was an honor for me.
Well, thank you.
So glad.
I mean, you had no idea at the time, but years later we met and started working together, and we've known each other ever since. We've worked together several times. But I love in your bio how you wrote, "Born in New York to a famed family of actors, Mike first walked on stage at the age of 3, stole the show from his father, and hasn't looked back since." Would you please share with our audience who you come from Yiddish theater royalty. The greatest Yiddish theater actors are you and your parents. Really, and again, I'm not being hyperbolic. This is real. Tell us what it was like to grow up in that home, in that environment, and in that world?
Well, let me first, explain who my parents were. May they rest in peace. My father's name was Pesach, but he was known as Pesachke. He was a matinee idol in Europe and Poland from the age of 20, many, many years ago, and was brought over to the United States in 1923 by the great Boris Tomaszewski, because he had heard that there is this incredibly talented young man in Warsaw in Poland who can sing and dance and act and whistle, and he brought him under contract to the United States. And his first appearance was in a Yiddish variety show on Broadway at the Nora Bayes Theater, where Al Jolson was appearing at the same time, and they were both very similar. Then he met my mother many years later, while they were both backstage at a Yiddish fundraiser. She was only 17 years old. He was older than she was, but he fell in love with her. He engaged her to travel with him to perform in South America, as was the custom in those days. When it was summer in the United States, South America had the Yiddish theater season at that time.
Right?
They fell in love on the ship sailing to Argentina and got married there. And the rest is history. They were together for almost 50 years. And my sister and I have a twin sister, were born into this family of great, great, talented Yiddish stars. And at the age of 3, as you mentioned, I did walk out on stage once. It was a Christmas matinee at the National Theater in New York City. The Yiddish theater in New York at the time was still blossoming. And some of his colleagues wanted to play a little trick on him. I was 3 years old, and they put a hi-hat and a beard with a rubber band on me and said, go to daddy. And I walked out on stage while my father was singing, and the audience started laughing. My father had no idea what was going on. He looked to the side and he saw me. So he stopped the orchestra and he said, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" And I said, "I'm Santa Claus." And he said, "Santa Claus, what are you doing here?" I said, "I want to sing." "You want to sing? What do you want to sing?" So I mentioned a song of my father's. My father was a recording artist for many years for Columbia Records. In those days, they recorded Yiddish songs and Italian songs. And I mentioned a crazy song of my father's. And I sang it. And the audience went crazy. I took a Shakespearean bow and walked off and came back, took another bow. And that's how I started my love of the theater. I was hooked. And at the age of 7, my parents decided to incorporate us into the family business. We traveled to Argentina. And from that moment on, I traveled with my parents all over the world doing Yiddish theater in South America, in France, in Israel, of course, South Africa, Canada, and the rest is history. That was my schooling was the Yiddish theater.
So not everybody knows that our executive director and the woman who makes all this happen is Amy London, who was married to Brucey Adler Olav Hasholem. So Julius and Henrietta, talk to me about some of the great stars that you remember as a kid and how you and Mike, I remember you guys used to tell me how you would run up the stairs together at the Hebrew Actors Union. Tell me a couple of stories about the great stars that you remember.
Well, first of all, Brucey and I were born 6 months apart.
Right.
His mother, Henrietta Jacobson, his father, Julius Adler, they were performing. This was 1945. It was right at the end of the war. And they were performing together at the Hopkinson Theater in Brooklyn in a musical comedy called Wer ist schuldig? Who's to blame? and both Henrietta and my mother were pregnant at the time. And so, and they were playing war brides. And in order to cover their stomachs, their pregnancy, they would use these large feather, fans, ostrich feather fans, and they would perform as brides. And so Brucey was born 6 months before me, and we were friends ever since. We were
Right.
childhood friends. There was nobody closer than Brucey to me. We called each other Zelda. Don't ask me why, but we discovered this name Zelda, and that was it. So Brucey's loss for me was like losing a brother.
Yeah, me too.
And I still, whenever I perform and I sing Romania, Romania, I dedicate it to Bruce because we did it. We did it together. It's up on YouTube. Anybody that wants to see it.
Right.
We sang together Romania, Romania. We filmed it up at the Hebrew Actors Union,
Right.
which still exists on 7th Street.
And one of these days, you and I are going to turn that building into a major museum of Yiddish theater, which it deserves to be.
Yeah, that's been my promise to my parents,
Right.
and to so many of those greats. That building exists. It is now not a union anymore. It's a foundation. And someday we're going to try and raise enough money to create a museum of Yiddish theater.
It's
I grew up.
Hanukkah. It's
Yeah.
Hanukkah, which is
Oh,
a
maybe,
time
yeah.
of miracles.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we're going to make miracles.
Well, you asked me about some of the greats. I mean, my father, when he first performed on that performance on Broadway, Jacob P. Adler was sitting in the audience, and my father had to sing a song, which he made very famous, called "Ich bin a Kalike." I'm handicapped,
Right.
and he needed a cane, and he forgot to bring one. So Adler was sitting in one of the boxes, the royal boxes in the theater. He got up. He was an older man at the time, and he said, "Kim Ingele, here, nimm mein Stecken, take my cane," and he performed with his cane. And from that moment on, the Adlers became very close with my father. Actually, he had, from what I understand, he had a bit of a romance with Stella. And many years later, I studied with her, and she accepted me only because of my father's influence, accepted me into her class. And then there were the greats that were like my uncles and aunts, like Lebedov and Molly Picon and Menashe Skolnick and Maury Schwartz. I worked with Schwartz when I was a teenager. And Moshe Oischer and Fredela Oischer, and I could go on and on. Jaime Jacobson, of course, the great Jaime Jacobson, but they were the royalty. I mean, the Yiddish theater in those days was even more popular than, they used to come from Broadway. Right. To study and learn the productions that were on
Yosef Bulof. Bulof did
Second
Death
Avenue.
of a Salesman. Bulof did Death of a Salesman in Argentina, in Buenos Aires. You were talking about going to South America, the circuit.
Well, South America was the circuit that we all used to perform in summer. They would go down there because just Argentina alone had 500,000 Jews in Buenos Aires, and most of them came after the Holocaust, and they wanted Yiddish theater. I always joke about the popularity of Second Avenue. It was the Jewish Rialto, the Jewish Broadway, and so many great stars. People like Jenny Goldstein. I mean, the melodramas that were created on Second Avenue were the birthplace of the, when you watched on television today, what are they called? Soap operas. Yeah, the soap operas. They started in Yiddish theater. I mean, Jenny Goldstein was famous for her tragedies in her soap opera. People came to cry at her performances. And they tell a story about one man who sent two of his children through college, selling handkerchiefs outside of Jenny Goldstein's theater.
Right.
So,
Another source of income.
Of
Of
course. And
course.
that, look, that's where I grew up, and that was my, my beginnings in the Yiddish theater.
Right.
And eventually, in the '60s, when we finally moved back to Israel, I was very lucky to be cast. We did the Megillah, as you mentioned, great, great Yiddish musical, the first Israeli show to be on Broadway in
Right.
Yiddish in 1969. That's when you saw it.
Yeah.
And eventually I was cast in a major musical, Israeli musical film called it's the Shnei Kuni Lemel.
Uni
It's great,
Lemel.
yeah, based on a Yiddish,
Greatest classic of all time. Are you kidding me?
exactly.
To
And that
this
turned
day in
me,
Israel, everybody knows Kuni Lemel.
they call me Kuni Lemel,
Of
wherever you go in
course.
the world, I'm known as Kuni Lemel. And
Of
that kind of turned me into a legendary Israeli star. To this
which then
day,
led,
whatever I've done, I'm still Kuni
right.
Lemel all
And
these years.
that led to an amazing career back on Broadway
Yeah,
and into, the Netherlands.
yeah.
I was a little after you, so I knew Jack Rechtsite and Seymour and
Seymour,
Yablokov.
yeah,
Yeah, so I grew up in that world when I started doing Yiddish theater as a kid. After I saw you and decided to be an actor, and then I moved to Israel, where I got to grow up with you on screen in Kuni Lemel and all the other great movies. But tell us about how you transitioned back to Broadway and Barnum. I mean, you were involved in some unbelievable, shows.
yeah. That was interesting. I mean, it was all fate. Everything is bashert in life, and sometimes the weirdest things happen when you least expect them. I was performing in a tourist nightclub in Jaffa in Israel in the late '70s, and a lady came up to me, and she was a correspondent of Dutch television. It was 1978, and they were about to celebrate in Holland Israel's 30th independence. And she said, we were looking for some program to present. And I have a friend who is the head of one of the major stations in Holland. He happens to be Jewish. And I think your show would be great. Why don't you give him a call? And I said, sure, give me his number. I'll give him a call. And I went home and I said, I'm going to Michigan. I'm going to call somebody from Tel Aviv in Holland and tell him I want to do a show for him. And then I said to myself, what can I lose? It'll cost me a phone call.
Right.
Anyway, that phone call turned into a show that they built an Israeli nightclub for me in the Netherlands at one of the studios. I did my show in English.
Right.
And as a result of that show, I was offered my own variety show on Dutch television. I had to learn Dutch. I did learn
Which is
Dutch.
a very
And
difficult language.
it's not a language, it's a throat disease. Forgive me. But Hebrew helps because of the cha, cha, cha.
Right.
That's what you need in Dutch as well. For 3 years, I had one of the most popular variety shows in the Netherlands, in Belgium, Luxembourg. And one of the guests on my show was a lady named Chita Rivera. And Chita recommended, make a long story short, she came back to New York and recommended me to Cy Coleman, the great composer, whose musical Barnum was on Broadway. And they were looking for a replacement after a year for the star for Jim Dale, who had won a Tony Award for that role. And they were auditioning over 100 actors, some of them very famous. And I had the chutzpah to fly in from Israel to audition for this show. I mean, it's the craziest thing anybody's ever done. As opposed to my agent at William Morris, who said, "Forget about it. They're not going to. They're going to try and go with the $6 million man or somebody like that."
Right.
Anyway, I flew in. I did the audition, and I got the part. And I was the first Israeli to star on Broadway in a major musical.
Right.
That's it's all bashert.
Mazel. It's all mazel, like you said. You got to have a little mazel. But
That's right.
you also have to have the goods, and you've got the goods. You've got the schoire, baby.
Yeah.
You've got the schoire. So now you have done so many shows, so many movies. I am fascinated that now you are starting to direct films, you're starting to get involved in television series. So now tell us a little bit about that transition from, doing TV and film and theater to now becoming a writer, director, star of television and film in Israel. And tell us a little bit about the shows and where they are.
Well, you and little by little, we don't stand still in life, and we shouldn't stand still in our careers either. And things evolve. You don't want to keep doing the same thing you've done over and over again. And I always look for new challenges. Been there, done that. And plus the fact that when I did Barnum, I was 36 years old, and jumping around, it was a circus show, and doing all the physical things on stage in a musical, including walking a wire and going to circus school. That's something you can do when you're 36, but not when you get a
But
little
now when
older.
you're 45.
Yeah, exactly. So as you mature, I always look for new things, and I always knew that at some point I'd want to direct a motion picture. I directed all of the plays that we used to do, certainly the Yiddish plays and the Hebrew stuff that we did. But I always and I was always involved in the production and the direction and the cinematography of the films that I did in Israel. And I knew that someday I wanted, evolve into that direction. I wasn't ready for it. I didn't think I was ready. But 3 years ago, we were about to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Six-Day War. I had participated in it. I entertained the troops as a soldier in Tzahal and the IDF. And after the war, I was given a story by a friend of mine that I've kept for over all those years in a drawer somewhere, because it was a story that I knew I should adapt someday for my first directorial debut in a feature film. And so over 3.5 years ago, I wrote this screenplay. I couldn't afford a screenwriter because they were too expensive, so I bought I brought the program that the screenwriters use anyway, and I wrote the screenplay. I was lucky to have two friends of mine invest in this project, and we shot it in Israel. And it's a story of two soldiers that meet uh, in Sinai after the day after the ceasefire, one an Egyptian and one an Israeli. And what happens to these two enemies, and how they have to decide whether to continue fighting or to cooperate and survive. It's a very inspirational story. I was able to get a wonderful Israeli actor, famous actor, to portray the Israeli, and a wonderful Egyptian American actor, Sammy Sheikh, who had just done American Sniper for Clint Eastwood, and he agreed to come to Israel, portray the Egyptian. And the film was released exactly for the 50th anniversary in Israel. It's been in film festivals all over the world, and I am now working to get it onto Amazon so that it can be seen all over the world.
Oh, how wonderful. And it won awards. I mean, this is
Yes,
an award-winning film.
I'm very proud of it. And that,
Now
that's the direction I
tell me
want
about
to take now.
tell me about the role that you play where you're a vampire, rabbi. You're like a
Okay.
rabbi vampire.
Throughout the years in Israel, I had my own television shows and was guest stars on many TV shows. And about 2 years ago, I was approached by a very popular Israeli actor, entertainer, comedian, who had written a new series that he was about to shoot in Israel, and he got in touch with me. I didn't know him at the time, but we did a Zoom like we're doing with you now, and he said he wrote a part, and he grew up like you told me that he grew up gadalti alecha. He grew up watching, yeah, watching my films. I was, you know, his idol. And he said, I wrote a part for a rabbi in this series, but I wrote it with you in mind. I was told that there's no chance that you would agree to do this, but I'm trying anyway. Would you read it and maybe agree to do it? And I read it. I said, of course I'll do it. And we shot it in Israel, the first season. It's called Judah, and it's basically a modern day comedy drama about a Jewish vampire. I can't give you any more of it, but it was picked up, it was a big, big hit in Israel. Then it was picked up by Hulu. So it's streaming on Hulu now. It's been streaming on Hulu. We shot the second season about 8 months. Well, actually, it was before the pandemic started. And that just finished screening in Israel, and Hulu has picked that up as well. And I play a rabbi, and it's a wonderful,
A
great.
rabbi that becomes a vampire.
I can't. No, hey, we can't give it away. That's a spoiler.
Okay, all right. I won't say
No,
more.
you know,
Show me the
we
footage.
can't tell you what happens. You have to watch it.
All right. I'm not going to say what happens. All I
Right.
know is we were sitting at Carnegie Hall and we were rehearsing for our Carnegie Hall show. And you called me over and you showed me video on your camera. And I freaked out because it was brilliant. And what is Fauda on Netflix?
Well, again, this is something that luckily the last year or so, I was approached by Netflix to do some dubbing. They've made a decision across the board that all their foreign acquisitions, series, films, are now dubbed into English for the American audiences. And I was approached to perform, to dub in several series, different parts. We did a French series, a German series, a Swedish series, and then I was asked to direct the third season of an Israeli series that is one of the most popular in the world called Fauda. I had dubbed one of the leading parts of the second season, and they approached me if I would be interested in directing the third season, which we completed in February, just before the COVID crisis started. And since then, we've had a bit of a pause because of the pandemic. But 2 months ago, Netflix was able to make an agreement with SAG and AFTRA to allow them to go back to hiring actors to dub. It's all done in studios that are very, very sanitized, securely sanitized, both for the crew, for the actors, for the directors, the technical people. I just finished directing the dub of a Spanish movie that's coming out at the end of the month. And now we're starting next month an Italian series. And it's something that you know, from the first moment, I fell in love with it. It's another kind, another direction that I'm able to take, especially in these times where we can't go anywhere. It's all done, you know, on camera, virtually. I can't travel to Israel until things get a little better. And so that's what I'm doing right now. And I'm very happy doing it.
But the silver lining of this horrible COVID is that it has created this amazing coming together of people like you and me and so many others, especially in the area of Yiddish and Yiddishkeit. You know, lo mir reden a bissel Yiddish. I mean, the bottom line is Yiddish has suddenly become very popular. And it's all over the world. We did a festival, a Yiddish Fest in September. 170,000 people watched it, 189 participants from 9 countries, 44 events. Yiddish is hot. Yiddish is sexy. So tell us, I know we're running out of time, so I want to get to the, to what's
Our
coming
surprise.
and our big surprise announcement. But tell us about the Dibbuk. Aren't you doing like a big Dibbuk?
Yes, I did. I did something a few months ago where we did a Yiddish program, and from all over the world, participants, performers participated. It's something, sometimes a tragedy brings on something positive, and this tragedy has brought about Zoom,
Yeah.
and people can see things all over the world that we would have never been able to do in
Right.
person. And so the Congress for Yiddish Culture now organized the 100th anniversary of the Dibbuk uh, in Yiddish. We just finished taping it, and it will be broadcast this coming Monday. What is Monday? The 14th, I think, right? Yeah, I think it's the 14th. And it is a international cast that we did, obviously, via Zoom. It's wonderfully done, and I participate in it. And it's the Dibbuk. The Dibbuk started out in Yiddish, and then Habima took it and became the great, venue, the great drama for the Habima Theater. Uh,
Icon. The
and
Dibbuk
it's
is an
fascinating. It
iconic.
really is fascinating.
Sure. Yeah, the Dibbuk is an iconic piece. There are pieces in the world that, very much like, your Tennessee Williams plays, obviously the Shakespearean, classics. But then there are pieces like by Arthur Miller, which will come to our little announcement. So,
Right.
we mentioned Joe Buloff, who did Death of a Salesman in Argentina in 1959, and then did it all over the world. And then several years ago, I was very honored and privileged to play Willie Loman off Broadway and nominated for a drama desk. And we were nominated for Best Revival. Then we took it to Toronto and sold out the run, at which point I thought, wouldn't this make an amazing movie?
Well, I saw you, Sion, and I saw you off Broadway when you did it, and you were marvelous in it.
Thank
And the fact that it lends itself so naturally to the Yiddish language.
you. Right.
So tell your
Joan
friends here what
Copeland.
we decided to do.
Joan Copeland came to me with tears in her eyes and said, this is what Arthur was thinking of when he wrote the play. This is what he really saw the play as, a Jewish play. And a lot of the language in Death of a Salesman is very prosaic in the sense that it sounds like Yiddish. And so our interpretation was very different. But it took me a while, but we have now secured the film rights to Death of a Salesman in Yiddish from the Arthur Miller estate. And ladies and gentlemen out there, I am so proud to announce that Mike Burstyn will be starring with me in the film version, God willing, when we raise the money and make it happen, of Death of a Salesman in Yiddish. And I cannot wait to work with you, because we've never, other than a small thing we did way back when, and we've shared the stage a few times, we've never actually done a show together.
Right. Well,
So,
it's
Mike,
about time.
it's tight.
Yeah, it's about time.
Yeah.
Uh, you will be, like I am happy to be on your live broadcast now, your streaming. I have on YouTube, I have a channel called Mike Burstyn and Friends, and
Yes.
you will schmooze with me. Anyone who wants to go on. I also have a podcast called
Oh,
Mike Burstyn and Friends. You have to listen. You have to, be imaginative. And today I was sitting around, I was bored. So I said, let me call some friends of mine and maybe they'll agree to schmooze with me instead of on the phone. We'll
right,
do it via Zoom.
right.
And so I have a lot of friends up there, and you'll be the next one on YouTube, Mike Burstyn and Friends.
I am honored to be in the company of some great luminaries that you've interviewed on your show. And so thank you. I'm very, very grateful and very
By the
honored.
way, this goatee, suits you.
Does it? My mother,
How had
by the way, my mama shikta gris.
Hashem Dank.
My mother
Give it,
sends me love. By the
give it
way,
a
you
t-shirt.
mentioned performing for the army, for the soldiers. When I was 15, the Yom Kippur War broke out. And I was an assistant director on a show with Gabi Amrani in Israel, written by Eli Sagi, called B'ni Hadoktor, my son the doctor. And Avram Selektar, one of the actors, got taken to the army. Menachem Eini, who passed away, jumped into his part. I was 15. I was the assistant director. I knew all the lines. I jumped into Menachem's part, and we went to the Golan and we performed for the soldiers during the war. So
Can you
another
believe
thing,
it's been, how many years has that been already? Wow.
73, whoosh, 80, 90, 2000, almost 40 years.
Now I know how old you are.
Yeah, well, I'm not as young as I look, but neither are you. You look great. So is there anything else you want to share? Go to the Mike Burstyn YouTube channel.
Mike
Michael,
and friends.
Mike Burstyn and Friends. Go listen to the podcast. Go watch all his shows. Is there anything else they should be looking out for, Mike?
In Yitz Hashem, they should be looking out for Death of a Salesman in Yiddish.
There you go. Beautiful.
All
Michael Hashem Dank, thank you very much for doing this with me. You are my first, and I am forever grateful. And I can't wait to do your show.
And best of luck with it.
Hashem,
Thank Amy for me as well.
he's here backstage.
For helping us.
Yeah.
And regards to the family. And I wish everyone a very happy and healthy Hanukkah. And please, please stay safe.
Yes, please.
Wear your masks.
Wear your masks.
Keep your social distance.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. And make sure, here we go. Make sure that when the vaccine comes out, you take it.
Yes.
Because the alternative is worse. So stay social distancing. Don't do anything foolish.
Yeah.
Take the vaccine.
Wash your hands.
And wash your hands so that next year we don't have to do this remotely. We can do it in person.
Halavai of Finsgiza. Beautiful.
Okay.
Thank you for coming, Mike. I'm going to say goodbye to the audience, and I will talk to you very soon. Hashem Dank.
Hey, Chag Sameach, everybody.
Chag Sameach, Git Yontiv.
Git Yontiv.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot tell you how excited I am to be here live at the Betsy Hotel on Miami Beach in this beautiful Carlton room, and the art on the walls, the sculptures around me, art everywhere. And the Betsy Hotel is our festival sponsor, and I'm very grateful to them. This was the first. So on Sunday, well, first of all, we have a full schedule every single day. We have amazing things. Tonight, Yale Strom and he's going to do a concert, and we are going to schmooze a little afterwards. We are also going to have tomorrow, all day long, till Monday. We're doing different programs. 11 o'clock, we're going to have Es Gesundheit, which is from the Forward newspaper, How to Cook Latkes in Yiddish. We're going to have a very wonderful Yiddish glory, laughing against fascism, jokes and songs of World War II with Anna Sternschiss and Psoy Korolenko. That will be at 2 o'clock tomorrow. And we have a visit from the Canadian consulate, so we'll talk about that. Tomorrow night, we have a beautiful concert called See the Light, which was prepared for us by cantor Shira Ginsburg and Carol Fantel. And we're going to close tomorrow night with a klezmer in quarantine updated version of Yiddish tangos. And then on Sunday, we have Es Gesundheit, Yale Strom presenting his new illustrated children's book, Shloimel, Boimel, and his lucky dreidel. So please join us and bring the kids. That's at 12 noon on Sunday, Eastern time. And then my favorite Yid Life Crisis boys from Montreal are going to do a little fireside-like chat, a Chanukkiah side chat with the Yid Life Crisis. And I'll be joining them for that. And then we're going to have our second Schmoozing with Avi, which will be a repeat of the opening section. But then my second celebrity interview is the great Tova Feldshuh, talking about her new book, Lilyville. So please join us for all our programs. Tonight at 10 o'clock, in about an hour and 10 minutes, we're going to have a concert with Yale Strom from San Diego called Shimmering Lights with Elizabeth Schwartz and friends. So ladies and gentlemen, we're back. YIDDISHFEST, YI Love YIDDISHFEST 2020 Hanukkah edition. Thank you so much. Please tell your friends to join us. And if you can, and it's the end of the year, so anyone who's looking for that tax-deductible donation, or just to do a good deed, to do a mitzvah, and to give a little tzedakah, please, why don't you join us? Go to our website, yiddishfest.org or yilovejewish.org, and help support us in any way that you feel comfortable. All right? Ashenim Dank, and I'll see you in about an hour and 10 minutes. Thank you.